Hi, my name is Stephen Blocker. I'm the CEO of Maru. Congratulations on making it to phase two of the interview process. We're really excited that you applied. The goal of this video and the webpage that you found it on is to give you all the information we can about the protocol architect position. Because I'm sure, as you know, this title doesn't really come up much because it's never existed before. We had to make it internally in order to service all of all of what our software can do. So the protocol architect position really has three main functions that you'll be doing. The first is building out these protocol sets into Maru. So as we expand Maru across more and more sections of the country and the globe, we have to put these protocol sets into our app, right? So the app can function well. And what that really means is taking these PDF documents of hundreds of pages long, which I'm sure you're all aware of, and turning them really into 3D models, blueprints to that the computer can understand, so it can do all those amazing things in the app. The second piece of this is when we go to put those protocols into Maru, we use a second piece of software that we have built, equally as powerful as the app itself, sometimes even more powerful, that allows us to put all these protocols in. You will be using that software all the time as you go through protocol set after protocol set, and in doing so, become the expert on this software. As such, you'll be working with our designers and our computer programmers and everyone else on our product team to make that software better and better over time, making it so powerful that we hope it'll have an amazing impact in the future of EMS. The third piece is, as a paramedic in our organization, you'll be monitoring national standards, be that PHTLS or AHA guidelines from ACLS and BCLS, stroke guidelines, all the way through the military work that we do with TCCC, prolonged field care, and everything else. Any of those national standards, you'll be given some of them to do, and you'll monitor them for changes and then be able to summarize those and put out documentation, write notifications, emails to all of our clients that they apply to so that they are kept up to date with everything that's been changing within that, within the national conversation on those protocols. So to start with part one, let's talk about what we mean by putting in these protocol sets. So building out these 3D models. So in general, we'll start with a new protocol set that we're expanding into, and you'll be asked to kind of put that in and build that out in Maru. It'll normally take about 2 months to do one. The first week or so is just kind of sitting there and really reading through it over and over again, really understanding all the nooks and crannies of the protocol set. And then we start getting into mapping out that protocol set. And I'll give you an example of what that looks like in a second. Then from there, you'll then enter the protocol set in, which we won't be able to really do much of today to show you, but we'll get into that later on in the interview process. And then the third piece will then be monitoring that protocol for changes over time. So as the protocol keep changing, you'll be working with the docs who actually write these protocol sets directly, in some cases very closely, and they'll be notifying you of protocol changes that are coming up in advance, and you'll be able to start working on those changes and maintaining that protocol set. So the day it goes live, we can instantaneously publish that new protocol set to all the medics and EMTs in the field using it. So what do we mean by putting in a protocol set? Well, let's show you. So I have two parts of my screen here. On the left side is the New York State Difficulty Breathing Protocol Set. Maru is the official app for the entire state, so all 62,000 plus EMTs and paramedics have access to us here. And on the right is kind of a mapping that we do, right? A flow chart of what it looks like. This is a pretty basic protocol itself, not too crazy, only 2 pages long. So it's a great one to start with. So if we look here, you'll see these 3 boxes up at the top. So we have signs like wheezing, symptoms like difficulty breathing, respiratory distress, and diagnoses like asthma, COPD, and bronchitis. These are kind of a very short list out of the thousands and thousands of medical conditions that we have in Maru, of things that would come to bring us to this protocol, right? So when a provider is saying that they have any of these situations, right, we know this is the protocol we should pull from. Obviously, this is just a sampling, but as you would be working through the protocol set after that first few days of really absorbing it, thinking about it, reading it over and over again, you would then start mapping this out, right? Which protocols are covering which diagnoses, which signs, which symptoms, which differentials, and kind of working all that through. So that's that piece. From there, we kind of start going into the classic flow chart. So it's important to call out here on the left, if you haven't seen a protocol set like this before, we kind of have different layers, right? So CFR starts here in red, but then stops before it hits the EMT section, before the advanced EMT section, critical care, paramedic, and then after that, medical control points that you can call to speak to doctors and ask for permission to do. And then other kind of key pieces of information, key notes that the docs who wrote this wanted the providers to know about. So as we start going through this, we see oxygen administration at the top, kind of applies to everyone. And then we get into this wheezing or asthma piece. So with that, if we look here on the left, we say that it says, if the patient is wheezing, right, give the albuterol. Well, that's why did we also say asthma? If we read through the protocol set and we flow down here, we'll see the top bullet point here actually says, use of albuterol via nebulizer by EMT for indications other than asthma. Well, if they're already allowed to use it for asthma and they only have to call the medical control physician for something other than asthma, when was the EMT allowed to give that albuterol? Oh, they must mean this albuterol up here because it's the only time an EMT can. And so what we really see here is that there's this kind of mini protocol or sub-protocol, as we call it, inside the main protocol that covers specifically if the patient's wheezing or has asthma with difficulty breathing, right? So we start off with that. Then we see here we kind of have a split, right? One is you can give albuterol 3 times. The other is you can give albuterol and protropium or Combivent or whatever you want to call it 3 times as well. And the blue one is for paramedics. Pink is for orange is for EMTs and above. And how do we get that? Well, if we look here on the EMT side, we'll see, right, you can give the albuterol the first time, but then you may repeat it to a total of 3 doses. Well, it says that here, but then it says you can repeat it again here a bunch of times, and then again here a bunch of times. Well, what they don't mean that a paramedic can give that medication 9 times. I really hope you don't have to push Combivent 9 times or albuterol 9 times when you're on a run. But what they really meant to say is, well, the paramedic can do this 3 times and the EMT can do this 3 times. And so now that we understand that, right, reading through this, we can actually map it out the way the physician meant it to be read, right, which is that it's this albuterol or this albuterol, right? From there, we can kind of flow down a little further, and we'll see that we can push CPAP, or that we can use CPAP, and then we kind of branch off here to the left, and if a patient has severe respiratory distress, they can do 1 or 2 other, they can push epi, right, give an EpiPen. So that, again, is not kind of the standard flow. It's not just give it no matter what, only for severe respiratory distress, which we can see called out here on the side in different places, right? So whether it's here for severe distress or if we look down here, right, we'll see the EpiPen allowed to be used here, right? And they call it different things for different levels of provider, but we know they're all talking about the same piece here. So that's that. And we'll see that for severe respiratory stress. Then as we move farther down, right, we'll see that a paramedic can push DEX, and then in different situations, they either have to call medical control to give it or not. For a patient with an asthma history, we can just give the MAG right away. But if it's COPD or something else, right, we have to call medical control. And again, we're teasing that all out of these bullet points. We then start flowing through the rest of the key points, and you'll see here that kind of as we go around, right, in these yellow notepads all over, we're kind of breaking up those key points into the ones that should be attached to a certain part of the protocol set, or should be mentioned on everywhere that they see the protocol, right, that those notes become. So that's kind of the part 1 of mapping it out. But from there, we know that as an EMT versus a paramedic, you're flowing through this very differently, right? And so as we look here, let me zoom out a little, we can see that the EMT versus paramedic are going to go differently through this. So if I look at this just at those 2 levels, the EMT, right, is really only doing these parts, right? If you have a patient with either asthma, give the albuterol, follow up with CPAP, and then if they're in severe respiratory distress, give them an IM of epi. But if we go for the paramedic side, right, that changes a lot and a lot more comes into play. Some of those things from the EMT side kind of disappear. And so this is one of the ways that we map this out, because when you're in Muru using the app, when you're an EMT versus a paramedic, even when you ask the same question, even if you interact with the app exactly the same way, it answers those questions, it gives you information differently. And that's because this exists, right? And we can map all that out and understand that all in that level of detail. So that's a little bit of a view on how we tease this out, right? How we start the process of turning this from a 2-dimensional model to a 3-dimensional model. As we start making all these inferences, while we start going through all this and pulling all this out, we then start working directly with the physicians who wrote it, asking them to approve the changes or approve the pieces that we've looked through, right? Sometimes we have to follow up with them and ask for extra details, right? Hey, there's no maximum on the pediatric dose. Did you mean the adult dose should be the maximum pediatric dose? Kind of things like that on top of this, right? And then we work with them hand in hand, having them sign off on all the questions or give us those answers to that piece of information. So that's that piece. The next piece is, again, as I mentioned earlier, right? As you start working on entering this into the app, which again is something we will show you later on in the interview process. Entering this into our website where you can kind of build these protocol sets out in a different piece of software, you will become the expert on it. And so as one of the protocol architects and one of the experts in using it all the time, you'll be the best person to work with the engineers and designers and everyone else in the team to make that software better and better. Hopefully taking that amount of time it takes you to build out a protocol set now and making it faster and faster to go. And then we have a lot of other interesting places that software is going in the future. Albeit to say, it is one of the most powerful pieces of software I think we could have ever created. And then the last piece, again, is working on those national standards, right? And pulling all that information together. So I hope that gives you a little bit more of an insight into what's going on. Thinking about this as kind of your day-to-day, right? I would say that you should be expecting for the better part of the first year is only entering these protocol sets with some, right, small improvements on the software as we go. And as you get more and more familiar with it, right, you're going to become a bigger and bigger part of that conversation. But your day-to-day, kind of 80% of what you're doing in general, is going to be entering these protocol sets in. We are not only the official app of New York State, but we've been contracted by the U.S. Army and the U.S. Air Force to put in every single protocol set they have. Other sections of the DoD are following up, and we have several states on the wait list from there, a few other countries as well. So we'll really be expanding pretty quickly, and you'll be getting to see an amazingly wide amount of protocol sets, working with some of the most amazing doctors in the world. I still cannot believe that I have their cell phone numbers and can call them and speak about their protocol sets all the time. And kind of really getting out there and really kind of learning and being an expert across all protocol sets and how they work and how they're built. And then implementing software that allows them to be used faster and better than ever before. So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into the position. We're really looking forward to speaking with you at the next phase of the interview. Thank you for your time.